Random House Audio presents Heresy by S.J. Parris. Read for you by John Lee. Prologue. Monastery of San Domenico, Maggiore, Naples, 1576. The outer door was thrown open with a crash that resounded along the passage, and the floorboards shook with the purposeful marching of several pairs of feet. Inside the small cubicle where I perched on the edge of a wooden bench, taking care not to sit too close to the hole that opened over the cesspit beneath, my candle flickered in the sudden draught of their entrance. Allora, I thought, they have come for me at last. The footsteps halted outside the cubicle door, to be replaced by the furious hammering of a fist and the abbot's strained voice. Fra Giordano, I order you to come out this instant with whatever you hold in your hands in plain sight. I caught a snigger from one of the monks who accompanied him, swiftly followed by a stern tutting from the abbot, Fra Domenico Vita, and could not help smiling to myself in spite of the moment. "One moment, Padre, if I may," I called. I looked at the book in my hand and with deep regret threw it into the hole, producing a coughing fit to cover the splash it made as it fell into the pool of waste below. It had been such a fine addition, too. I unlatched the door and opened it to see my abbot, his heavy features almost vibrating with pent-up rage. 4 monks stood behind him, appalled and fascinated. Vita turned to the men. "Search him." My brothers looked at one another in consternation. Then that wily Tuscan friar, Fra Agostino da Montalcino, stepped forward, an unpleasant smile on his face. Without a doubt it was he who had put Fra Vita on my trail. "Excuse me, Fra Giordano," he sneered, his hands roaming down each of my thighs. "Try not to enjoy yourself too much," I muttered. "Just obeying my superior," he replied. When he had finished groping, he faced Fra Vita. "He has nothing concealed in his habit, father." Fra Vita glared at me. "The sin of our first father was the desire for forbidden knowledge. He thought he could become like God, and this is your sin also, Fra Giordano Bruno. Your curiosity and your pride in your own cleverness prevent you from using your gifts to the glory of the Church." Just then Montalcino called out from behind me. "Fra Vita, here is something you should see." He was shining his torch into the hole of the privy. Vita blanched, but leaned in to see what the Tuscan had uncovered. Then he turned to me. "Fra Giordano, return to your cell and do not leave until I send you further instructions. Fra Montalcino, retrieve that book." Montalcino looked at the abbot in horror. "I, my lord abbot?" "You, brother, and be quick about it." "I can save you the trouble," I said. "It is only Erasmus's commentaries. No dark magic in there." "The works of Erasmus are on the Inquisition's Index of Forbidden Books, as you well know, brother Giordano," Vita said. "Fra Battista," he called to another monk, "send word for the Father Inquisitor." I could have dropped to my knees and pleaded for clemency, but there would have been no dignity in begging. I pulled my cowl over my head and followed the abbot and his attendants out, pausing only to cast a last glance at Montalcino. "On the bright side, brother, you are fortunate," I said. "My shit really does smell sweeter than everyone else's." "See if your wit survives when you have a burning poker in your asshole, Bruno," he said, with a marked lack of Christian charity. The great facade of the basilica loomed to my left as I walked toward the monks' dormitory, and I craned my head upward to see the stars scattered above it. The church taught, after Aristotle, that the stars were fixed in the 8th sphere beyond the earth, that they were all equidistant and moved together in orbit about the earth, like the sun and the 6 planets in their respective spheres. Then there were those, like the Pole, Copernicus, who dared to imagine the universe in a different form, with the sun at its center and an earth that moved on its own orbit. Beyond this, no one had ventured. No one but me, Giordano Bruno the Nolan, and this secret theory was known to me alone, that the universe had no fixed center, but was infinite, and each of those stars I now watched pulsating in the velvet blackness above me was its own sun, surrounded by its own innumerable worlds, on which, even now, beings just like me might also be watching the heavens, wondering if anything existed beyond the limits of their knowledge. One day I would write all this in a book that would be my life's work, a book that would undo all the certainties not only of the Roman Church, but of the whole Christian religion. But there was still so much more that I needed to understand, too many books I had yet to read. all of which were forbidden by the Dominican order. I knew that if I were to stand before the Holy Roman Inquisition now, all of this would be pricked out of me with white-hot irons, with the rack or the wheel, until I vomited my hypothesis out half-cooked, whereupon they would burn me for heresy. I was 28 years old. I did not want to die just yet. I had no choice but to run. Bursting into the cell I shared with Fra Paolo of Rimini, I rushed about the tiny room, gathering what few belongings I had into an oilskin bag. Paolo watched my frenzy with concern. He and I had joined the monastery together as novices at the age of 15. Now, 13 years later, he was the only one I thought of as a brother in the true sense. "They have sent for the Father Inquisitor," I explained. "There is no time to lose." "I told you, Bruno," Paolo said. "If you spend so many hours in the privy every night, people will grow suspicious." "It was only Erasmus, for Christ's sake," I said. "I must leave tonight, Paolo. Have you seen my winter cloak?" "Bruno, if you run away, they will take it as a confession. They will put out a warrant for you. You will be condemned as a heretic." "And if I stay, I will be condemned as a heretic," I said. "It will hurt less in absentia." "But where will you go? How will you live?" My friend looked pained. I stopped my searching and laid my hand on his shoulder. "When I have put enough distance between myself and Naples, I will teach for a living. There are plenty of universities in Italy. Perhaps I will go to France." I tried to sound cheerful, but in truth my heart was pounding and my bowels were turning to water. It was somewhat ironic that I could not now go near the privy. Somewhere in the dormitory building I heard a door slam. "They are coming," I whispered. "Where the devil is my cloak?" "Here." He handed me his own, tucking it around my shoulders. "And take this." He pressed into my hand a small bone-handled dagger in a leather sheath. "It was a gift from my father. You will have more need of it than I. And now, sbrigati. Hurry." Our cell was on the first floor. Its window was just large enough for me to squeeze myself onto the ledge. I paused to look out. A gibbous moon hung over the city, smoky trails of cloud drifting across its face. I had been a monk for 13 years. When I lifted my leg through the window, I would be turning my back on that life for good. Paolo reached for my hand. I leaned down to kiss his knuckles when I heard again the emphatic stride of feet thundering down the passageway outside. "Dio sia con te," Paolo whispered, as I pulled myself through the window and twisted my body around, so that I was hanging by my fingertips. Then I let go. As I landed, I heard the sound of the casement closing and hoped Paolo had been in time. The moonlight was a blessing and a curse. I kept close to the shadows and, with the help of wild vines, managed to pull myself over the far wall, where I dropped to the ground and rolled down a short slope to the road. Immediately I had to throw myself into the shadow of a doorway, because a rider on a horse was galloping in the direction of the monastery. I knew the figure who had passed was the local Father Inquisitor, summoned in my honor. That night I slept in a ditch on the outskirts of Naples, when I could walk no farther, Paolo's cloak a poor defense against the frosty night. On the second day I earned a bed for the night and half a loaf of bread by working in the stables of a roadside inn. By the third day I was more than halfway to Rome. I would be walking into the Lion's Maw, but I liked the boldness of the wager with Providence. Either my life would begin again as a free man, or the Inquisition would track me down and feed me to the flames. But I would do everything in my power to ensure it was not the latter. I was not afraid to die for my beliefs, but not until I had determined which beliefs were worth dying for. London, May 1583. On a horse borrowed from the French ambassador to the court of Queen Elizabeth of England, I rode across London Bridge on the morning of May the 20th, 1583. My heart swelled with anticipation as I reached the south bank of the Thames and turned right along the river toward Winchester House, where I would meet the royal party to embark upon our journey to the renowned University of Oxford. In front of the Palace of Winchester, I saw a colourful spectacle of people thronging the grass. Half of London society appeared to have turned out to watch the pageant in the spring sunshine. Servants were making ready a grand boat, decked out with rich silk hangings and cushions tapestried in red and gold. I dismounted, and a servant came to hold the horse while I walked toward the house. Suddenly I felt a fist land between my shoulder blades, almost knocking me to the ground. "Giordano, Bruno, you old dog! Have they not burned you yet?"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?